There are three kinds of people in the world: those who pay interest and those who earn interest. But there's a third type of person, the mega wealthy people, who learn when it's wise to pay interest in order to make more interest. This is how money works. So in this educational episode, get ready. I'm going to teach you how money works and how you can do what wealthy people do to become mega wealthy. So my name's Doug Andrew. I've been a financial strategist and retirement planning specialist now for nearly 5 decades, helping thousands of people optimize their assets, minimize taxes, and empower what I call their authentic wealth. I've been very blessed and honored in my life to have authored thus far 12 best-selling books. And in all of my books, I teach how money works. And sometimes my audiences, they sit there with a deer in the headlight look, and they get epiphanies and ahas, and they sometimes admit they've thought about these concepts but never really understood them before. So as I introduced at the outset, there are three kinds of people, and in some of my books, I call these people strivers, arrivers, and thrivers. So simply put, I said, there are people, we'll call them strivers, who pay interest. And they borrow money to consume. And they buy depreciating assets. And they will always have too much month left at the end of their money. These are what many advisors call financial jellyfish. And so the strategies that I teach are not for those people until they learn discipline, how to live on less than what they earn, so they have discretionary dollars to set aside and begin to save, compound their money, and then they learn how money works. But first of all, they have to be disciplined. Now, the difference between strivers and arrivers begin to learn how money works. They learn 3 marvels of wealth accumulation: compound interest, tax-favored accumulation. But the third marvel is safe positive leverage, which is the ability to own and control assets with very little or none of your money tied up or risk in that asset. It's what makes the world go round, and this is how banks and credit unions, insurance companies make money. They learn to pay interest in order to make more interest, and this is why they thrive. And people who understand how to do this become thrivers also. They learn when it's wise to pay interest in order to make more interest. And so I started in 1974, and I've been using and teaching these banking concepts, how to become your own banker, my entire career. But I was not the originator of this. It goes back centuries to the Bible, the New Testament. Matthew chapter 25 talks about the parable of the talents. And when you really understand that parable, it is how to pay interest in order to make more interest, to put your talents to work. The same concept is taught in Luke 19, the parable of the pounds. So this has been around a long time, and there are many financial advisors and other authors that have come around. And you may have heard of Pamela Yellen. She wrote a book called Bank on Yourself. I think it was first released in 2009. I think prior to her was Nelson Nash, who was the originator of the infinite banking concept. And then in 2008, he wrote a book called Becoming Your Own Banker. In 2007, chapter 7 of my third book, where I teach these concepts, was actually titled Learn How to Become Your Own Banker. So, Pamela has asked me to make sure it's clear when I record these educational episodes that I am not affiliated with Bank on Yourself, and they do not sponsor me. I don't even endorse Bank on Yourself or infinite banking. Do those concepts work? Yeah, they work to a degree, but I have always used it utilizing indexed universal life And I think it actually is this banking concept on steroids, okay? And so when I began to teach this back in the mid-1970s, it is really understanding how banks and credit unions and financial institutions thrive by paying interest. So they borrow OPM, other people's money, and they don't do it just because they're a benevolent institution. They're paying 1%, 2%, 3% or more interest by borrowing other people's money. When you put money into a bank or a credit union or an insurance company, they're paying you interest, and they don't just put your money in the vault, they put your money to work. They invest it, they loan it back out again at 5, 6, 7, 10% interest, often netting twice as much as what they're paying you. But if you really think about it, they would wither up and die if they did not pay interest. A bank or credit union's greatest asset is its liabilities. And so this is what makes the world go round. And so banks, if they pay you 1% interest, which is what they did for a long time after the turn of the century, on every $1 million that we loan them, because there's only 4 things you can do with money. You can spend it, lend it, own it with it, or give it away. And when you put your money in a bank or credit union, it's in a lended position. And so if they pay you 1%, that's only $10,000 they have to pay in interest on every $1 million they borrow from us. They turn around and they put that money, some of it, they put into insurance companies. Why? For liquidity and safety. See, in 2008, when 400 banks went under and 900 more were on the watch list on the brink of going under, the federal government asked the 5 major banks in America to disclose where they had their Tier 1 assets for liquidity and safety. And these 5 major banks admitted that 30 to 40% of their Tier 1 assets was invested in insurance companies, okay? Many times in the form of BOLI. What's BOLI? B-O-L-I stands for bank-owned life insurance. And they were paying 1% to borrow the money from the general public, $10,000 for every $1 million they borrow, and they turned around and earned 5% in the general account portfolios of these insurance companies that invested money in AAA and AA bonds and so forth. But most of these insurance companies are rated AA and AAA, which is like 5 or 6 notches higher in safety than a lot of these banks are rated at BBB. So the banks are increasing the safety of the money they borrow from you, and they're increasing the rate of return by 5 times. They pay you 1 and they earn 5. They're earning $50,000 every year on $1 million. They're only paying you $10,000. How much more is $50,000 than $10,000? Don't say, 5. It's 5 times. It's 500%. I've often asked, would you hire an employee for $10,000 that made you an extra $50,000? That's a 500% return on employment cost. Would you buy a widget machine for $10,000 that made you an extra $50,000? That's a 500% return on equipment cost. And so you can do this yourself, actually safer and smarter than the banks do. And so for years, I've been teaching not only why I sort of use the banking concept with my own money, but I use as the favorite repository where my money is liquid and safe, the same institutions that banks and credit unions do. I use the multi-trillion-dollar insurance industry, and my favorite vehicle is a maximum funded indexed universal life insurance contract because my money is not exposed to risk of the volatile stock market. Where if you took a variable insurance policy, you could lose money. And people did lose up to 40% twice from 2000 to 2010. People with indexed universal life never lost a dime during those down years. They may not have made very much, but they didn't lose. And they actually, in that worst decade, came out doubling and tripling their money from 2000 to 2012 when most Americans were barely back to break even. And so with indexing, you get to participate when the market goes up and not lose when the market goes down. And so some years I have locked in gains of 16%, 25%, March of 2020 to March of 2021 because of COVID-19. Many people using indexed universal life locked in gains of 61.33% and even 158% using what are called multipliers, okay? And so let's just round it down to earning 10 and netting 9, because I've actually averaged 9.62% since 1980. When universal life was first introduced. In 1997, indexed universal life was introduced, and I've actually averaged 11.17, netting 10. But let's just use 9. If I was earning 10 and netting 9, what's that 1% difference? It's not tax. It's the cost of the insurance that the IRS says has to be there in order for your money to be tax-free. So I'm earning a net rate of return, let's say, of 9% average. And if I borrow money for a piece of real estate or whatever at 4.5% interest on $1 million loan or mortgage, I'm paying $45,000, okay? But that's tax deductible if I do it correctly. In a 33% tax bracket, it's not costing me $45,000. It's only costing me $30,000 because I get to write off $45,000 of interest on my tax return, which offsets $45,000 of taxable income. In a 33% bracket, I actually saved $15,000 of otherwise payable tax. So if I borrow at 4.5% tax deductible interest, it's only a net cost of $3,000. So every $1 million that I pay a net of 3%, $30,000, I'm making $90,000. I'm making 300% more than the cost of the funds. Well, that is true with my indexed universal life. Whenever I borrow money out of my policy, I could have withdrawn it, but it would no longer be in there earning interest. Instead, I borrow at an indexed rate. I can borrow at 5%, and they will continue to credit me whatever the indexed rate is. And I have borrowed at 5, and some years I only earn 8, but other years I make 10. I make twice as much as the cost of borrowing. Why do I borrow? Because it's tax-free. There are years I've borrowed at 5, and I've had clients borrow out of their IUL policies at 5, and they've earned 25. On a $1 million loan, they were charged $50,000 of interest, but they made $250,000 on the $1 million of cash value that was collateralizing the loan that the insurance company gave them using $1 million of cash value. This is how money works. And so when you can make double, triple, even 5 times the net cost of borrowing, whether you're borrowing from a bank or a credit union, or if you're borrowing your own money out of your IUL policy, you're able to borrow at a lower rate and earn a higher rate. And so these are the thrivers who understand that over time, you will be compounding your money tax-free at a rate of return double, triple, quadruple, or more than the net cost of what you're paying. And this is becoming sort of your own banker. This is why banks, they might pay you on a CD 4 or 5%, but they turn around and loan the money back on home equity lines of credit at 7.5%, and they're making 3%. But in actuality, they're making an infinite rate of return because they're making that spread, and it's not on their money. They're making it on your money. And so you can't calculate the rate of return. It's called an infinite rate of return. So this is why sometimes Nelson Nash would refer to this as maybe infinite banking. Whatever you want to call it, it is why many savvy people gladly pay, like banks and credit unions do, 4% interest because they know they can safely earn 8%, twice as much as the net cost of borrowing. And if you continue to earn 8% compound interest tax-free, you're earning more interest on a compounding, bigger growing balance than you're paying simple interest on. Do the math. You will accumulate an extra $1 million, $2 million, $5 million over a 30-year period just on a couple of $100,000 that you are using this concept. Does that make sense? So if you want to learn more about this, I want to gift you a copy of my most recent best-selling book. Here's how you can claim your free copy because, you could go to Amazon and pay $20, but I want to gift you a copy. So simply go to laserfund, laserfund.com. Click on the link below. You contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I'll cover the rest of that cost, and I will pay for the book. I'll fire out a hard copy to you, priority mail. And then you can read. It's actually 2 books in one. This side is about 200 pages, 14 chapters with all the charts and graphs if you're a left brain learner. If you're a right brain learner, you flip it over and read this one. This is about 100 pages, 12 chapters with 62 actual client stories of how a laser fund can utilize this concept for you to help you thrive. Now, you can use your whole brain and read both of these, but claim your free book, and then there's options there to listen and learn or watch and learn if you would prefer. You can check out some of the educational webinars that we teach. We do them on a regular basis. You can even plug in your name to talk to an IUL specialist to help you see how these strategies could apply in your particular set of circumstances. And that consultation and analysis is absolutely free, no charge, no obligation. So this is not about me. This is about you and your brighter future. But learn how money works and how you can use this incredible concept to become wealthy.